Hello everyone, we'll be covering some Grand Tactician, the Civil War today. Let's start off with a new campaign, and why not start off with what I think is going to be one of the most interesting ones. Start from the very beginning, just as I like to do, most people like to do in these grand strategy games, so we can kind of see the whole situation starting and developing. There are some different knobs we can turn already if we want to go a little bit ahistorically. First of all, we can try to win as the Confederacy, which would be obviously ahistorical. But you can toggle Underground Railroad or Kansas Free State. You know, you could toggle these off and turn Go West on instead. And, you know, maybe there's some different style of play you want to go for, and maybe these different options will enable that. And that's true for both the Confederacy and the Union. But for now, we'll be playing as James Buchanan's the Union. That's right, he's still in office when we start the game, so we'll see the rise of Abraham Lincoln to office when we start the game. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this before, but there are these nice little movie cutscenes when we open up the game, and I think they're extremely well done. They're basically documentary level, where you get little historical tidbits, background on the situation. Lots of interesting things. I'm not even talking about the little loading screen pop-ups that were the quotes and such that we're seeing right here. I think we'll see it when I start this new campaign, that there's going to be, you know, a whole movie which basically plays, and like I said, it's documentary level production quality. It's really top notch. So that's one of the things you can expect to see. Here it is.
I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. Abraham Lincoln, June 16, 1858.
Now this is going to go on for about another 5 minutes or so. It's actually quite long. So if you are kind of interested in the documentary side of the Civil War, there are like really great Civil War documentaries. I mean, there's at least one that, it's funny, Ken Burns. I almost blanked on the name, but Ken Burns did a really great documentary series on the Civil War. I highly recommend it to anyone. However, if you want your learning alongside your video gaming, then this is another option for these little blurbs. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's so much documentary because we're not going to get into the number crunching and all that, but there's a nice background there. So the game is going to present us with these newspapers from time to time, whenever there's some event of some note, when different policies go into effect by either us, the Union, or by our opponents, the Confederates. We'll see these newspaper pop-ups. Also post-battles. Often, if a battle's decided one way or another, there's a newspaper reporting on it, as you'd expect. So we'll just right-click to dismiss this. This is just saying that, guess what? The Confederacy has seceded, and Jefferson Davis is the one running the shots there. I'm not going to go over the entire interface right now. We'll just cover things as we get to them, but you can see down here in the bottom right, we have our ability to move time forward faster or pause. Let's pause for just a second, get our policies set up. Here's our policies screen. Basically, this is somewhat like a tech tree, for those familiar with grand strategy, tech tree type stuff. It's basically how we can push our nation in one direction versus another. Again, this allows for some ahistorical play, if we so desire. We can go like a very diplomatic route, trying to appease the Europeans, which will prevent any threat of a European intervention, which was a real threat during the Civil War that Lincoln had to contend with. That he didn't want, for example, Great Britain interceding on the behalf of the Confederacy. And if you're playing as the Confederacy, you'll try to play that up as much as possible, because a British intervention is just a huge boon to your cause. So for now, we have enough policies. You can see 0 out of 8 is available to us right now. We can actually choose all across the board if we want, and just right-click to cancel these later. Because we're only allowed 8 at a time, but right now I think we benefit from just grabbing all 5. Now note there are some chapter divisions here. We're in a house divided, but we can't advance the tech tree, as it were, to chapter 2, a Demon of War. until certain events are satisfied. And that goes likewise for Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. You can see that these names are, I mean, there's a storyline built in. It's not like there's a narrative you're following, but there's a general flow to the Civil War that has been encapsulated essentially into these 4 chapters. And I'm pretty sure that we all know, or at least we can guess, what Nothing But Tombs is. This was probably by the end of the war when both sides are just really running ragged with lots of deaths and really despairing of the war cause. You know, both sides getting more and more willing to put down their arms and seek some kind of peace. Okay, so we did our policies. We'll just click that button again to get rid of it. And just in case you aren't familiar with the Civil War at all, this is the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. I think that's the title of this game even, so you probably knew that. But started off with the South, a bunch of, I think it was originally only 9 states which seceded. And just to tutorialize this as well, we can see, they already have 12 loyal states. I mean, it started with South Carolina first? I forget, but you know, the southern states one by one seceded for states' rights, which was largely a slavery type issue. But without getting too much into the politics of all that, we're kind of interested in running the military side of things, and that includes a little bit of the economy, because as that just had such a big impact on the Civil War. One of these sides, spoiler alert, it's the Union, has a much bigger economy. So, and we'll play with that in a second as well. But for now, we can see that there's 29 loyal states to the Union. There's 12 who have seceded and are now part of the Confederate States of America. So we'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully it won't increase, but I have a feeling it will. And the states highlighted in red are the ones that have seceded so far. So you can see Texas through Florida up to South Carolina. But right now, North Carolina or Virginia has not seceded, and Tennessee, yeah, there we go. Tennessee has not seceded yet. Oh, not even Arkansas yet. Okay. Kansas is a kind of a contentious free state right now. It's a territory, I guess, not a state. You can see that this is Nebraska territory. They will later become states. But okay, so let's actually advance some time now that we have our policies set up. There are little things we could do, like start recruiting a military. But right now, one of the policies that is here with the military tree is the ability to enable militia acts. Right now, if we recruit anybody, we can only recruit them for 1 month. So they're just, we have volunteers who are willing to serve in the U.S. Army for a fee, of course. We pay them. But they're volunteering. Essentially, they're willing to apply for that job, and we'll give them the job right away. Now, 1 month is just not a whole lot of time. You're not going to build a really disciplined military over that, so I'm going to wait a little bit. Let's wait until we at least get 3-month contracts. Now, a lot can still happen in 3 months, but ideally, I think we'll wait on the policies until we can get 12 months. However, if we wanted to read the text now, you can always just rest your cursor on anything and then just let the cursor hang there, and the bigger tooltip will pop up. This one says, for Militia Act 1, this is kind of a special policy. I mean, they all have their different effects, but Militia Act 1 may be one of the more important ones to pay attention to. It says, if I start on the 4th line, the second sentence already, this act will allow the recruitment of volunteer units under a 3-month contract. It will be considered an act of war by the Confederacy and will increase their morale. Can only be selected after March 4th, 1861, when Lincoln is inaugurated president. This will start the war. Yeah, and a few \n's there just to show what non-programmers, what a new line character looks like. And that's a great, I'm actually so glad that we actually saw something like that to remind me that this is a game in early access. So there's already been a lot of improvements. I was fortunate enough to have a copy of this before the early access was released on Steam. And I can already tell you there's been a lot of improvements. One, I know personally I had a bug where I couldn't cancel policies. I just left them a little bug report on the forum, and the developers addressed it. So that's a really good start, really promising start to things in my opinion. So just as a note, if you're watching this and you happen to play the game and encounter a bug yourself, well, you you may actually just want to send a bug report to Steam, and maybe by the next time you download the next patch, it'll be fixed. Okay, so that's an important one, but we have to wait for Lincoln to be in office, and we can see it's still only February. I think that 1x speed, 2x, 4x, even anything less than 10x is going to be a little bit too slow for us now that we've set our policies. So we're just going to let things start ramping up. Now, should I go over finances yet? Let's actually go to military, because I want to go to a fleet, my fleets. I know, hindsight 2020, right? So we can kind of look forward and think, we're probably going to need some fleets as the Union. This will enforce the blockade, kind of suppress any efforts by the Confederacy to build up a navy. So I have a home squadron, which is free to move right now, but I want to build some more ships that are just going to be sitting in harbor. So let's hit plus on the top right, which is going to allow us to build a... Okay, wait. The Confederacy has now passed 12-month contracts, so they're a little bit ahead of us, but for them, the army is existence itself. For us, the armies is just to, unify the country. So we're not as yet gung-ho about massing a huge army. There's still talks going on. Hopefully we can just bring them peacefully back into the United States, into the Union. Now, what kind of ship do we want? Mind you, when you scroll this list, it doesn't work. It works in a specific way that one scroll of the mouse wheel, you can see ironclad is on the bottom. One scroll of the monitor of the mouse actually brings an entire new list, and you can see that up here. If I scroll back up, one little flick of the mouse wheel. Ship types 1 through 14 is shown out of 29. So if we just scroll down, now it's 15 to 28. So if you're expecting a continuous scrolling bar, just reorient your brain towards something which is just scrolling one page at a time, and an entire page at a time. So looking through the options here, we have 29 ship types to choose from. Who has the ability to choose? Well, I don't know if I even have a level 4 port yet, so let me go for something maybe like a level 2. I have to find my ports. I think that we might have a level 3 port, but it might be Norfolk, which is only temporarily mine. It's in a very hot area, a contested area. So, you may not want to choose to build one of those. So let's just get like a level 2. Let's see, this ironclad river gunboat. Just by clicking on it, we can see, oh my gosh, 17 guns. It's got iron armor. This looks pretty potent. It only has 6 knots of speed, but this thing is, for us, going to be meant for the rivers. All we need to do is, the Mississippi is just a huge central vein through the United States at this point in time. It is today still, but it'll be a very big strategic, river. It's a very strategic location all the way north to south. So one of the Union strategies was actually to break this Confederacy in half by taking over the Mississippi and not allowing supplies to head west to east or vice versa. So let's build one of these just to illustrate building a new ship, and it should appear on the very bottom. There it is, the USS Arizona, which is not yet a state, but just part of. Is it even? I don't even know what the territory looks like right now. We just fought the Mexican-American War. The United States at this point has just finished the Mexican-American War. So I guess they probably acquired Arizona at that point in time. And that means this is a good time to name our first ship after her. Okay, so let's close the military screen, and now we can once again kick this back up to 10x. And now I do have my emblem down here. If you want some more content, I do a lot of wargaming stuff. Tortuga Power is my name, so you can just search for me on YouTube. But anyway, this is about Civil War, so let's get back to that. And there's not a lot for us to do in the very beginning here. Build a few ships if we want. We could actually amass more of a navy while time's ticking forward. suppose it's a good opportunity for us to just take a look at the other ships we may want to build. Some of these are not in great condition. We can see that Arizona herself is at 1%. If I scroll, we can kind of see it. We don't need a new fleet quite yet, but we may want to manage our fleets later. Yeah, why not? Let's. I have to say, I really like the idea of these ironclad gunboats. It's just 17 guns is very impressive. It's a big size. I don't know that. I mean, again, we can just rest our cursor on anything if we need a little bit more information about it. None of these things right here, but oh, US. So here we go. Well, I guess this basically just shows us all the details that we see below. 17 guns. This is actually 7 guns for this one. Upgrade button, I don't know if that'll do anything quite yet. Okay, industrialization 1 has been picked. That means that means our policies are done. I think a lot of the beginning ones are all done at the same time. So let's, yeah, there we go. The first tier of them is done. So now we can choose some more policies. We only have 8 policies to choose from. I'll show in a second how we can actually get around a little bit of that. But let's go ahead and enact the Tariff Act. Just start getting into it. And now there's a difference between, you can see that there's 5 vertical red lines. These are our actual policies, but everything else is kind of like a special policy. I don't know if it's a policy, we can call it like an act, something like that. We can probably call it an act since most of them are acts. But they're separate events, they're separate tech items from the 5 main vertical red line, which are policies. So for example, once we do any of these, they cannot be repealed. So if I was to click on the Tariff Act, which I already did, I cannot right click it to cancel. Same with civilian warships, letters of marque. So whereas I can right click and cancel the policies for the diplomacy, although I don't want to do that right now. I'm not going to be able to do it. So there's a trade-off in these, and we want to be careful about which ones we choose. The gameplay decision for our policies is just that we're not allowed to have so many of them at the same time. So we'll go ahead and grab the next diplomacy and the next breadbasket and the next industrialization, which will take us up to our maximum of 8. And those are all the policies we can get in the first chapter anyway. I don't want to do print notes quite yet, personally. Well, I guess we could actually. We could just grab it and print a whole lot of money. Maybe our goal is to win the war as soon as possible at whatever cost it takes. So build like a ton of ships and just go siege all the different coastal fortifications we can. I guess, further enforce the blockade. But that is, oh man, the burden of command weighs heavy, right? Confederacy invests in heavy industry. Alright, so fair enough. They also took industrialization. We do have our home squadron here. Now we only have, if I was to talk a little bit about the pop-ups in the bottom left, it's going to give us an overview of our unit. This one has 11 ships with a total of 119 guns. The morale is eager. Now 57 days at sea reflects the number of days that we have left at sea before we run out of supplies. And you can see that the ammunition here is 100%, provisions 100%, 94%, and fuel looks very close to 100 as well, 99%. So we could sail this group south. I mean sail, but perhaps as well steam, because we do have some fuel. We could just move this whole unit south. And, being somewhat familiar with history, you might know that Fort Sumter was where the site of the opening shots of the Civil War. So maybe we'll move our cells down here. We'll give the order, and then we'll confirm the order with the check mark. Otherwise, our unit may not move, so make sure you hit that check mark. And then it's not going to move until we unpause the game. And right now it's the waiting game. I like to imagine that behind closed doors, there's a lot of politics going on, people trying to bring the slave states back. maybe this is not a bad idea. Okay, so the Union passes the Tariff Act. So this is going to increase our income. This is there. European traders are shocked. We don't see it yet, but once the war really begins, once it really kicks off, we're going to see up just to the right of our policies through goods and trade and all this, we're going to see a little indicator which shows the willingness of Great Britain to intervene. Which is obviously we do not want them to intervene because they will choose to intervene on the side of the Confederacy. But I mentioned finances. Let's take a look at this screen. We have the ability to scroll through a variety of different charts here, which is kind of fun. You can see how tariffs have happened in the last, well, we're on March 2nd, so a whole lot of nothing lately. Sales taxes, I mean, we're collecting a fair amount. We collect a lot more sales taxes than the Confederacy does. Income tax is just 0 right now. I think that this is something which may come into play later in the war, but I think it requires a special policy. Corporate tax, we have 0. Land sales. So this is, well, it's not a very significant one. You can see that the tariffs has given us about 800K, but the sales tax is really where it's all at, which is making us almost 72K. 72,000K. So it's to say it's the lion's share of our income is an understatement. As far as expenses go, a lot of it is on administrative stuff. Looks like we have subsidies, and those are actually within our control. So what we can do is manipulate these as much as we want. If I choose, I can say, hey, you know what? I'm willing to put extra investment, extra money into diplomacy, industry, agriculture, transportation, even the trade war, which essentially amounts to our ability to block the Confederacy from trading with Europe. And I think that essentially damages their economy. I'm not exactly sure what civil order does, but I think it does what it more or less sounds like it does, which is keep the people from being too discontent. Okay, and we're actually doing the auto-managed finances here. I'll turn that, you know what, we'll leave that on. We'll leave that on. And once again, I have failed to unpause. It's actually quite nice. Every time one of those newspapers pops up, we're going to see the game pause for us, so something doesn't happen while we're reading the headlines. A luxury we're afforded that I guess people in real life are not. Now this is the strategic map. At some point we're going to be getting into war, and the exciting thing about that is we're going to have the option to move to the tactical map. So this game is impressive in its scope, extremely ambitious. I've probably mentioned before. We're able to toggle, just like Total War does. You're able to switch between, okay, Lincoln is inaugurated. So now if we want, we can go over here to policies, and we can do the Militia Act 1, which is probably not going to make everyone happy, but well, I guess so yeah, you can see that once Lincoln is inaugurated, or maybe because we selected the Militia Act, North Carolina and Virginia have both suddenly seceded, and I think Arkansas, along with them, now has seceded as well. So there it is. Davis's cabinet to move from Montgomery. He wanted to settle it in Richmond, which is basically just a way of making sure Virginia stays as a Confederate state. It's obviously bordering Washington, D.C., so there's a lot, as considering it's the capital of as the United States, and now, of course, only the Union, just from a game standpoint. Okay.
Secession, once taken, can never be recalled. We and our posterity shall see our lovely South desolated by the demon of war. Alexander Stephens, Vice President of the Confederate States of America.
And that would be a whole nother one of those skits, but I'm going to once again click forward through it. I'm sure that you can see it all, and once you're playing the game yourself, just grab yourself a cold beverage and I like to just soak those in. It gets you more immersed. And now that we're at war, we do see the British intervention percentage at the top. We also see a Union invasion, and that's not really an invasion, but more like a stranding of friendly forces. So the Department of Virginia here is kind of stuck trying to defend the Fort Monroe garrison. And what is this icon here? I can't... is this a normal icon? Let's go scroll over to... I think that... Yeah. So these department ones, they get a special house indicator, which is kind of interesting. Oh, okay, wait. Glorious victory at Chesapeake Bay. All enemy ships escaped. James River Squadron in retreat. So I think what happened is the Confederates did launch an attack. We actually sank 2 Confederate ships. This is amazing. So this is not my first time playing the 1861 start as the Union, and I haven't seen this happen before. Well, that's really cool. What a glorious victory for us. And we're moving at 10x. Might not want to win. Might not want to move at 10x anymore. Okay, so we have Lieutenant Commander James Ward is the one in charge of this. Might want to send this guy to port. Just get him to return to port just to repair any damage. I didn't see if he had any damage. Although... yeah, both of their conditions are deteriorated. So hopefully when I send them to port, they can begin repairs. Now, it doesn't look like the weather is amazing right now. But we see that the Confederacy has brought some armies to life. We have Army of the Potomac. And right across, we have Army of Northeastern Virginia. Now, with the 3-month contract, like I said, it's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit underwhelming to be losing people that quickly. I'm going to go ahead and try to get Militia Act 2 going so we can hold on to our, you can see down here, we can hold on to our militia for a full year, 12 months. We're doing this, and now this also opened up further policies because the next chapter has begun. Let's go over to finances and let's increase our spending slightly to give us another 2 policies. Go back over to policies. And now which 2 do we want to grab? Well, I honestly, I want to make sure we save way for industrialization. That's just by far my favorite. We don't actually need the new policies yet. I jumped the gun a little bit. Maybe we can start putting pressure on the Confederacy by doing letters of marque. And we could start military 2. The ones I absolutely want are industrialization 3. I don't know what I want beyond that. Perhaps the better money rate, which does lower our interest, and you can see why a lowered interest would be of great benefit to a nation that's constantly needing to loan money or to borrow money. We'll pause for the time being, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on the Confederates across the river. I don't plan a Union attack until at least this after the snow breaks a little bit. A little bit better weather be nice. Well, here's our home squad moving in. I was planning to move these in defense of Fort Sumter, but Fort Sumter is still fine. What I see instead is that we have the North Carolina Squadron with... If I pause here, maybe I can see. We may not know what they have, but here we go. 6 ships and 13 guns. Well, that sounds like a great challenge for the home squad if we can just catch them out. So let's just move over here ominously. And we still have enough supplies ourselves, but it does look like they are wisely moving into port. Or are they? Yes. No. We may have our first battle over here. I should say, okay, 12 months contracts is the perfect time for us to begin building our army. And this is one of the most exciting things about this game. I really love the order of battle that you can play around with. First of all, you can grab any existing army. I think the biggest one that's currently in existence for us is under Irvin McDowell, the Army of Northeastern Virginia. If we choose this option over here, Manage Army, it's going to show us the order of battle. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. It should show us the order of battle for his army. Is it not going to? There it is. So the Army of Northeastern Virginia. You can see that we have one army, and right underneath of it, for now, is 3 divisions. With the New Jersey Militia being, honestly, this is more of a brigade than a division, but it's currently called as a division. Now, one of the great buttons over here, recruit a new army, that's what we want to do. Let's see where that army went. Okay, so where do we want this army to be? Let me just base this one out of New York. Okay, there it is. So we have the 25th Army, and this is, this is a unit which is already on the map in New York. Looks like it's near Rochester. So let's add a new group to this, and so our army, after adding a group, now has a corps underneath of it, which is fantastic. But a corps is just a person who commands some stuff. We need them to command something. Let's add a new group again, and now we get a division. So you can see the hierarchy that's being built. This is your order of battle. And finally, when we get to the division level, we have add new unit. Now I can add a new unit at any step along the hierarchy. So if I want, I could have, let's say, some artillery, which are at the corps level, while my divisions might be infantry only. Or likewise with cavalry. I might have some cavalry, which I just attach essentially as scouting elements to some of the higher up order of battle staff, I guess. But when it comes down to the division, the meat and potatoes has got to be our infantry. So the number of volunteers is shown here. This is the recruiting screen. I guess I haven't explained this yet, but this is essentially how many volunteers are available from a given state. It's not really a big surprise that Alabama and Arkansas don't have any volunteers. These are Confederate states. So it does show all the different states, and in fact, sometimes we do have men. So we have some 70 men fielded from Delaware, but only 700 volunteers. Not really enough to recruit a full unit. So we'll just wait for the our recruitment propaganda to reach those states and hopefully pick up some extra volunteers. For now, we'll leave them alone. Again, I'm going to be doing this mostly from New York, but we have a lot of volunteers available from New York. It's just one of the more popular states. Populous states. I think it is the most populous state in the United States, and that's before the secession even. So I always like to go with the red color. I think this is historical for some New York units. So we'll go ahead and recruit them. And now we have Army, Corps, Division, Brigade. You can see that it's going to take 4 days for this brigade to assemble, and then I don't know, it might even take some additional days beyond that for them to meet up with the army. I think it actually shows the time for them to assemble and meet up with the army. So I'll do a few from New York here, as I think a lot of groups in the Civil War, a lot of divisions were entirely, or at least brigades were entirely from a single state. That's a practice the U.S. military went away from afterwards when they had whole towns. So obviously there's you can kind of hope for an additional camaraderie if all the people are neighbors. The downside is, if you have a brigade have a bad day, your town has just lost half its population. So it's a kind of a more risk averse. It's a really statistical treatment of things. If you just sprinkle a little bit of population into everyone, you're not going to lose, you shouldn't, at least in theory, lose a sizable part of your population from any one location geographically. Everyone should just absorb a little bit of the blow. Now what's even more cool is we can also change the weapon that these are using. By default, these guys are all going to get Springfield rifle muskets. It's a pretty common weapon for early on. But if we wanted to, we could just say, hey, you know what? I want you to use the worst weapon possible. That's going to be the Springfield musket. I'm obviously not going to do that, but some of the statistics for these weapons are listed here. Now, it doesn't show the Springfield rifle musket, but if I just rest my cursor here, give the tooltip a second to pop up. And there it is, caliber 0.58 inches, huge. Obviously these are huge bullets back then. Huge bullets. Accuracy is mediocre, range is 400 yards. Weight is 7 pounds. I haven't actually seen what effect the weight has, but I imagine that there's some effect on how tired the unit gets, or at least in theory that information is provided, so if the developer one day wants to include that, he might. I don't know if it's done right now. And then you can even rest your cursor on the melee weapon and show that this is a melee. I mean, the bayonet is the melee weapon of choice for our rifle musket here. And we could change this if we wanted. We're currently using a weapon that's already been is already included in our recruitment costs, but if we want, we could switch this over to a different weapon. And we'll pay a little bit of money to do that. Maybe we want to do it though. Maybe we just decide that we want this, for whatever reason, we want these guys to use smoothbore muskets, the rebored muskets. We do have the ability to produce these, believe it or not. These are 400, they only fire at a rate of 2.5, and I think our Springfield rifle muskets fire at, 3 rounds per minute, so they're a little bit slower. We don't have, some of these we don't have research, right? So this is where the policies come in. As we get deeper into the policies screen, we'll enable more of these weapons to be used. You can see this Dreiss needle gun here. It's effective at only 400 yards, which is the same as our current weapon, but the rate of fire is actually 2 times what our current weapon, so it's double. And firing 2 bullets for every 1 your opponent fires, I mean, it goes without saying that's a very good thing. Now, one thing to note, I am recruiting people here, and they're only on the 3-month contract. So that's not what I really want. I want these people on the 12-month contract. So it might mean that I actually, speaking of which, I might have jumped the gun on recruiting them. Let's see. Let's go back to, okay. So again, this is early access. It's interesting. Sometimes we're going to get this screen where we have no interface. Well, we're going to run into a bit of an early access bug here, but nothing that can't be resolved. However, we will take this opportunity to cut away, call this video to a close. If you enjoyed it, please press the like button, and I'll see you back for episode 2. Until then, stay safe and take care.